Let's move on. Minda. Minda was born in 1978 in Mumbai, or as I knew it then, it was Bombay. And coincidentally, that was the first year of my many trips to India. A lot of you who've had me to your clubs to speak as the co-chair of the polio for the district, you'll know that I was a trolley dolly with British Airways. Yes, that's a flight attendant. And went to India on many, many occasions. Minda was born to a domestic worker and a single mother. At 6 months old, Minda was paralyzed from the hips down by polio. The chances of surviving in India then, at least until her 18th birthday, with such a disability were very slim indeed. Her mother was unable to care for her, and so Minda, like so many others, was sent to an orphanage. If any of you, like me recently, saw the film Lion, you'll appreciate what the conditions were like then in orphanages in India. I hope and pray they've improved. At the age of 3, Minda was adopted by Americans Bruce and Ann Dentler and joined the family of 2 children and another adopted son from Korea. I think it says Korea because it's on one of the blank bits. I hope I'm right, Minda. And she moved to Spokane in Washington. Shortly after her 3rd birthday, and over the next few years, Minda underwent a series of surgeries on her hips, legs, and her back to straighten and strengthen her body. She could eventually walk with braces and crutches. Minda loved something. Minda loved competition. I'm guessing that's what it says. And threw herself into many activities, from the debating at school to playing the piano. And she graduated high school and moved to Seattle to study business at the University of Washington. While in college, she interned at the White House and IBM. She studied abroad in Spain and backpacked throughout Europe by herself, wearing only her leg braces and her crutches. Upon graduating, she moved to New York for a management consulting job and pursued an MBA. She got married and now works for a multinational insurance company. But the next remarkable chapter of her life was to begin after meeting Dick Turin. Let's call him just Dick. And he was the first amputee to compete in the New York Marathon. And this would inspire her to become the first woman wheelchair triathlon competitor and attempt the seemingly impossible grueling race. The Ironman triathlon requires a wheelchair athlete like Minda to swim 2.4 miles, hand cycle 112 miles, and push a racing wheelchair 26.2 miles. But let's hear from the woman herself. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Rotarians, please welcome Minda Dentler.
Every time I watch that video, I have to pinch myself and remind myself that that was me, especially since I didn't make it. Apparently I can't work the slide. It was October 11th, 2012, a year before the finish that you just last saw on that video. I was on my bike, pushing up what seemed like a never-ending barren hill up to a town called Hawi. I was struggling, tired and dehydrated, as I could feel the heat emanating from the asphalt, measuring almost 98 degrees. I was near the halfway point of the bike portion of one of the most prestigious, longest single-day endurance race events in the world. And following me was a truck that picks up people who have fallen behind or are dropping out of the race. And the reason why they were following me is that I was the last competitor on the course. And the guy in the vehicle would yell at me every 15 minutes or so, "Hey, how you doing? It's starting to rain. Are you sure you don't want to stop? It's 3 p.m. and you're not going to make that bike cutoff, so why don't you quit now?" When I got to the top of the hill, I was discouraged. There was no way I was going to make that time limit because I was almost 2 hours off pace. I had to make the agonizing decision to quit. I removed my timing chip and I handed it over to a race official. My day was done. My best friend Shannon and my husband Sean, they were waiting at the top of Hawi to drive me back to town. And on my way back to town, I began to cry. I had failed. My dream of completing the Ironman World Championship was crushed. I was embarrassed, and I felt like I had messed up. I worried about what my friends, my family, and people at work would think of me. What was I going to put on Facebook? How was I going to explain to everyone that things didn't go the way I had assumed or planned? A few weeks later, I was talking to Shannon about the Kona disaster, and she said this to me: "Minda, big dreams and goals can only be realized when you're ready to fail. Failure and making mistakes is a necessary part of success. You can't really avoid it unless you just play it safe and remain in your comfort zone all the time. Your whole life hasn't been easy. You are a risk taker. Are you gonna let the so-called failure define you?" At that moment, I had a decision to make. Was I gonna let this so-called failure define me, or was I gonna try again and rewrite this chapter in my life? As the days and weeks followed, I started processing my experience and I remembered what is true about failure. It can discourage us, but it also has the power to motivate us and to push us forward. So what I want you all to walk out of here in 30 minutes from now is to walk out of here with the 3 Ps, or the principles that I have learned to conquer the Kona Ironman. And if you're not familiar, it's like the Super Bowl of triathlon. The Kona or Hawaii Ironman is the oldest iron distance race in the sport. And the Ironman for a wheelchair athlete like me consists of a 2.4-mile open water swim in the Pacific Ocean, swimming in the waves and the current, 112-mile hand cycle ride in lava fields. Now, that sounds exotic, but it's not as scenic as it sounds, and it's pretty desolate. And you top it off with a marathon, or a 26.2-mile run using a racing wheelchair in 90-degree heat. That's right, it's a total distance of 140.6 miles using just your arms in less than 17 hours. And you thought P90X was rough. Just like you saw in that video, I was born in Bombay, India, and just before my first birthday, I contracted polio, which left me paralyzed from the hips down. Unable to care for me, my birth mother left me at an orphanage. Fortunately, I was adopted by an American family, and I moved to Spokane, Washington just shortly after my 3rd birthday. And over the next few years, I underwent a series of surgeries on my hips, my legs, and my back that allowed me to walk with leg braces and crutches. Now, my family is super athletic, and I always participated from the sidelines, cheering on my 3 siblings or handing out water at local road races. I remember wanting so badly to be able to compete, but I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. It wasn't until after college that I moved to New York City, and it was there that I was introduced to Achilles International. Thanks to Achilles and its mission to make sports accessible for people with disabilities, I was able to transition from being a spectator to being in the game or on the court. I learned how to hand cycle, and I completed a number of marathons. I discovered triathlon 10 years ago, and one of the reasons why I love triathlon so much is that I am competing side by side with able-bodied athletes facing the same challenges of distance and time. After completing 10 triathlons, I finished my first Ironman in Louisville just 6 weeks prior to my first attempt at Kona. So now that takes us to the first of our 3 Ps. I kind of cheated. I felt like they kind of go together, planning and preparation. It is so difficult to start any journey without proper planning and preparation. I'm sure you can imagine a race of this magnitude requires an extreme amount of effort. Here it was in early 2013, and I had just gotten married, and that's a project in and of itself. And the race was the following October. One Saturday afternoon in May, I was sitting with my husband, Sean, in our small New York City apartment on a little sofa with our legs thrown up against my mammoth of a hand cycle that seemed to take over my living room. And Sean pulls up this spreadsheet and he goes, "Minda, I made this Kona time calculator." And I'm thinking, what in the world are you talking about? He starts rattling off, "Did you know that if you get a 1 hour and 50 minutes on that swim and a 4-minute transition time, you only need to average 13.1 miles per hour on the bike, and you can make that cutoff time?" He quickly says to me, for every minute that you save on that swim, your average speed on the bike can go down by almost 1/10 of a mile per hour, and you can still make that swim bike cutoff time of 10.5 hours. Now, I'm usually the numbers geek in the house, and this was music to my ears. Maybe this whole Kona thing would be possible. I asked Sean, "So how do you think I can do it?" He said, "Well, why don't you focus on reducing your weakness, which is your swim, and building on your strengths, which is your bike." And so this led me to my next planning and preparation step, which is to build my A-team. Now, it's normally difficult for me to ask for help, but I shared my dream of Kona and enrolled a number of others, including my coach, a physical therapist, a separate swimming coach, a former Ironman World Champion in the hand cycle division and mentor, a few riding buddies, my friends and family, my sponsors, and of course, my husband, that Kona time strategist. And they all contributed to helping me become as prepared as possible for my Kona rematch that October. Now, the preparation for Ironman never really stops, no matter what the weather is. It's not easy or perfect, and depending on the workout, I had to get up between 4:30 and 5:30 a.m. to train. I won't lie, the preparation can kind of stink sometimes too. But I knew I couldn't pay someone to do the miles for me. I had to do them myself. And one day, it rained, and I had to do a 6-hour training ride in my hot apartment in the middle of August. It was miserable. But I did it, watching the voice on subtitles and listening to loud music blaring in my ears. I did a few half Ironman races just to practice executing my race strategies, but what made a world of difference that year is that I went on a last-minute, secret recon training trip to Kona just 3 weeks prior to the race, just to see how my training stacked up against the actual Kona bike course. What better way to train than to train in actual race conditions, right? So in high heat, humidity, and crosswinds, Sean and I rode 103 miles on the Kona bike course within the time that I needed to do it. It was then that I realized that I could do it. Planning and preparation can give you a sense of calm or sense of confidence that you've been in that situation before. So let's talk about our next P, which is positive mental attitude. In early August, I came across an article that literally changed me. It was written by one of my heroes, professional triathlete and 2-time Ironman World Champion, Chris McCormick. And he wrote an article entitled, "Ego is not a dirty word." He wrote about how he may be physically outclassed by other athletes, but when it came to desire and want, he could outplay anyone. It was his mindset or his ego that were his biggest weapons in many of life's battles, including those Hawaiian lava fields. He also wrote a story about fellow Australian Pat Cash in the Wimbledon finals in 1987. It was a quintessential David and Goliath story. Yvonne Lendl, one of the best players in the sport at the time, he was favored to beat Cash by odds of 16-1. But Cash beat Wendell, seemingly walking right through him to win that title. And when he was asked afterwards, how did you do it? Cass replied, well, the difference between most people and me is that most people think you have to see it to believe it. But I think you have to believe it before you see it. This thought pattern that guided Cash to his victory was his ego. It didn't really matter if anyone thought he couldn't do it. It was up to him to believe that he could. McCormick goes on to advise us, it's up to us to develop that self-belief. Believing in something takes courage, and stop hiding behind your fears. This got me thinking to myself, because before big races in the past, I would tell myself or my friends how nervous I was or how I didn't think I could do it. I was stuck worrying about what would happen if I failed before I even got into the race. So on August 22nd, 2013, I wrote an email to my closest friends and family members, basically coming to the realization that I was the one holding myself back. I declared in writing that I would shelve my fear and that I truly believed that I could do this. This newfound attitude and self-belief carried me all the way to race day. Now I know, and we know, that changing your mindset or belief is really hard. And we're always told, oh, you must think more positively, but it's easier said than done. I really had to make this mental change a part of my training and remind myself every day that I could do it. I also had to change my perception of what failure meant to me, because it is a part of my journey, and it is a part of succeeding. And when I went to Kona that year, and I was recognized by a number of people who had seen me the year before, and they had asked me how I was feeling, I replied to them confidently, I came here to get this done. I had never been like that before. On race day, I fully realized the power of self-belief. It's having that belief inside of us that is bigger than the circumstances we face. We must draw confidence from within and never doubt our abilities, even if things get hard or uncomfortable. So that takes us to our last P, which is my favorite. I can change the slide. Perseverance. Guess I can't change the slide. So that is, race day is when the pedal hits the metal, literally. So on Saturday, October 12th, 2013, Sean dumped me into the ocean at the Kona Pier, and with 2,500 of my closest friends and competitors, we started swimming as that cannon went off promptly at 7 a.m. I focused on one stroke at a time, staying in between bodies and counting my strokes. 1, 2, 3, 4, and lifting my head to sight every so often just so I wouldn't get too off track. And if I screwed up counting, which I did, I would just start over. When I finally reached the shoreline, Sean picked me up and carried me out of the water. I was so stunned and thrilled when he told me I had managed a 1 hour and 43 minute swim time. On to the bike segment. I had 8 hours and 45 minutes to complete a 112-mile bike course. The first 40 miles they clipped by as we benefited from a little tailwind. I broke up the course in 7 to 10-mile segments in my mind just to reduce the enormity of the race. But my first issue occurred on that 15-mile climb up to Hawaii. I had an upset stomach. I resolved quickly to quit eating or drinking for 20 minutes just to give my stomach some time to settle down. But there was no stopping for me at the top of Hawaii, just a quick pit stop for water as I continued down that hill to chase that clock. By 3 p.m., I made it to mile 84. And with the sun beating down on me, I could feel myself literally burning up. I was all alone, cranking through a series of lava beds that seemed to run on forever. Those tailwinds at the beginning of the course became strong headwinds, some approximately 10 to 15 miles per hour. I found myself struggling to crank each additional mile. Then, by mile 94, I realized I was in serious time jeopardy because I had 18 miles to go in less than 90 minutes, and this included a few sizable hill climbs. I was stressed out, and I was scared that I was going to make that time cutoff again. At this point, I pushed my internal voice aside that said, "This hurts, quit." And I told myself, "Minda, you better focus. Focus on what you can control, and that is your attitude and your effort." I resolved to be okay being uncomfortable, and I told myself, push harder, forget about that pain, and keep that laser focus. For the next 90 minutes, I cranked as though my life depended on it. And when I rolled into town, I heard the cheers of my friends and family yelling, "Dentler, hurry up, go," which is probably heard by half of Kona. I realized I had better hurry up because time was running out, minute by minute, second by second. And when I made that turn and transition, I heard on the loudspeaker, "Minda Dentler is one of the last competitors to make the bike cutoff." I did it by only 3 minutes. It was 5:27 p.m. and I had been racing for 10 and a half hours. When I got into transition, I began to cry. Hard. I was overwhelmed. I fell apart. The volunteers, they poured buckets of ice on me, and I continued to sob for 12 minutes, refusing food. I told Sean, I am so tired. I am so over this. And then a race official came by and said, "Minda, you better start that run or else you're gonna get cold." And I don't know, whatever he told me made me magically perk up, and I shuffled into my racing wheelchair. And on my way out of transition, I saw my wheelchair competitor, Susan, crying on the sidelines. She had missed the bike cutoff by a matter of minutes. She told me, "Minda, get it done for the both of us." And I nodded knowingly to finish the job that I had come there to do, but for the both of us. Now, aside from a tough, steep hill coming out of transition, the first 10 miles of the run went pretty quickly as I was so excited to finally pass people with my 3 wheels to their 2 feet. The sun quickly went down, and I found myself pulling up to Polani Hill, looking straight into a half-mile hill that looked like Mount Everest at mile 124 of the race. My friends and family were waiting at their stations to talk me up that hill. I was struggling, tired, desperately gripping those rims, zigzagging, making sure that I wasn't gonna tip backwards. That must have been the longest half mile of my entire life. But I did it with my friends and family literally by my side. When I got to the top of Polani, I turned left onto a very lonely 15-mile stretch onto the Queen K Highway. Totally exhausted, I pressed on, focusing on one push at a time. Then, by mile 24, word must have gotten out on the course that I was making history that day because I heard on the loudspeaker, "Number 154 is on her way to historic finish." Then, by mile 25, an NBC reporter rolls up to me and asks me for a small interview, and I'm thinking, are you serious? I'm in the middle of my race. This is very different from that guy urging me to quit that first time at Kona, right? I told the reporter that I was so excited that my friends and family were there to support me, but today was gonna be my day. At this point, it was 9:30 p.m., and I had been racing for 14 hours and 30 minutes. And it started pouring rain. I scooped up glue that Sean had put on my racing wheelchair, and I rubbed it into my gloves and onto my rims, hoping to get some traction as that rain made my rim rubber surface slippery. And remember that big hill, Polani, that I had to go up? Yeah, well, I had to go back down that, and my wheelchair friends were waiting at the bottom of the hill to cheer me on, and all I could think of was go, "Minda, brake, 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 do not crash into those side rails." It would really stink at a half mile left to go to tip over, right? When I made that final right-hand turn onto Lee Drive, I was overcome with emotion as I was nearing the end. Thoughts flashed through my head how happy I was that my friends and family were there to support me, and how much it really meant to me to finally get it done. And not only for me, but for Susan and all the other women who had come before me. I crossed that finish line. And my final time was 14 hours and 39 minutes. In the 35-year history of the sport of Ironman, I cannot believe that I, that paralyzed, orphaned little girl from India, became the first female wheelchair athlete to complete the Kona course. That moment of victory was worth the sacrifice. It just goes to show you that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when we are dedicated to making it happen. I've never had superior athletic ability, and not even in my own category, but I refused to quit, and I did not give up. We all have the resilience and the courage to succeed at whatever it is that motivates us. What I love about Ironman is the journey, the challenge, and the battle, knowing that you've done your best and you're putting it all out there. Now that I've shared my journey with you, I hope you can take away some of these principles. So now I'd like you to think about yourselves as Rotarians. The mission to eradicate polio is in some ways like completing an Ironman. Looking at the size of the task, many people would never have tried, but you have. You have been putting in the time and the resources to secure the day when polio would become a thing of the past. You have faced obstacles along the way to ensure every last child gets 2 drops of that polio vaccine. Let me tell you how I relate to your organization. A couple years ago, I was invited by Rotary to travel to India and to participate in a national immunization drive. And I got to see firsthand how the 3 Ps were applied to one of the biggest goals of all, the eradication of polio. Over the past 10 years, India has been immunizing over 200 million children annually during national sub and immunization day drives. It is a monumental challenge to coordinate logistics, communication, and to organize health workers and volunteers to ensure every child gets access to the vaccine. I participated in a polio rally in Berhampur to help raise awareness of this important initiative. I was impressed by the detailed planning and preparation of Rotarians and local health workers who not only organized but ran health camps and house-to-house visits. Without the use of a computer, WHO officials gave block-by-block assignments to each health worker, and they used simple worksheets to track the progress of immunization campaign activities. I sat down with Mr. Bose, National Polio Plus Committee member, and Dr. Mukherjee, a regional WHO official. Their belief and commitment to eradicate polio drove them to continue the work even when India suffered a few issues. And this included the resistance by the Islamic community of their region of West Bengal. They were able to address this by convincing the local imam that the vaccine was not an American-driven conspiracy as it was manufactured in Europe. This and other actions caused a complete turnaround in polio vaccination efforts. I also witnessed a different type of perseverance on the polio vaccination effort, and that is the care of those that have been paralyzed by the polio virus. I visited St. Stephen's Hospital, which is India's last polio ward, and it was there that I was introduced to, now I'm drawing a big blank on his name, Dr. What's his name? Dr. Verghese. And he has driven his life to treat and serve over 20,000 patients over the past 20 years. I saw his presentation on the countless surgeries that he has performed on polio survivors to help them become mobile. I also met many of the current patients who are under his care, waiting and recovering from those life-changing surgeries. Each surgery is paid for by the Rotary Foundation. Today, we are closer than ever to eliminate polio all over the world. What my Ironman journey represents for me is what is possible. I realized my dream and I became a champion. Because of Rotarians like you, Rotary has changed people's lives forever. You all are champions in the cause to eliminate polio from the planet. We are this close to finishing the job and crossing that finish line. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Now, stay right here, Minda. How's that for a story? It's incredible. Minda, I'm so grateful you were able to attend our All-Star Conference today and tell your incredible story. I was perseverant to get Minda here. I asked her many, many times because I really wanted you all to hear Minda's story, and we were able to work out the logistics and details to have Minda here to tell this incredible story. Now, Minda, in your talk, you talked about visiting the St. Stephen's ward and visiting the patients and the doctor. And when you were there, you met a young lady named Parveen. Mm-hmm. And Parveen, when she heard your story of persistence and perseverance, she was so moved by your story. She'd never stood before, ever. She never stood on her own two legs. Shortly after you met with her, she told her doctor that she wanted to stand. Can we put the picture up? Next one, please. I'm not sure if you've ever seen this photo, but after you met with Parveen, she stood for the first time ever. And here she is with the doctor. The next photo, she's with her doctor because of your story. So thank you for that incredible story, sharing it with us.